All right, everyone, thank you for attending the Budgeting Sucks But Not with MoneySwell webinar. We believe that you can achieve the benefits of budgeting in about 5 minutes a month. So my name is Ryan Lillis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MoneySwell, and let's dive right in. So in terms of today's agenda, we think it'll probably be roughly about 45 minutes. I'll give you just a super quick backstory on me so you have a sense of who I am and where I'm coming from. I have a 1 minute reminder. Then we're going to talk about budgeting. We're going to talk about some of the benefits of budgeting, and then we're also going to talk about the buckets of budgeting blockers. Then we're going to spend the bulk of today's webinar talking about the actual budgeting planner tool that is right within the MoneySwell platform. And that's going to be the bulk of the presentation. That'll probably be roughly 30 minutes. And then we will have a Q&A, wrap up, and then there's also a special offer as well. So here's a little bit of background about me. Like I said, my name is Ryan Lillis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MoneySwell.com. The only thing that you really need to take away from this slide, I think, is that I have a professional passion for building software that helps people to create and sustain healthy habits. Over the course of building MoneySwell, we did a ton of user research, and it was super exciting for us to leverage our experience in data strategy and user experience design to put together a platform that we thought would actually address the needs that came up during our user research. All right, so let's dive in. So just as a quick reminder, MoneySwell has 4 major components. The first is the assets and liabilities component. And this is your chance to see all of your bank accounts in one place, whether it's a bank account, a checking account, a savings account, maybe a retirement account, whatever it is. Maybe it's a mortgage, maybe it's an asset like a home or something like that you purchased, but it's a chance for you to see all of your accounts in one place. We also have a budgeting tool, which is focused on short-term money management. And this is, obviously the focus of the webinar for today. We have a retirement planning tool, which is helping you to set long-term goals and do planning around that. And last but not least, we have a financial education component, and it's designed to give you the right content at the right time based on where you are in your financial journey. So those are the 4 major components, and today we're going to be talking about budgeting. So what are the benefits of budgeting? Well, there must be some kind of benefit, because if you look at surveys out there, between 30 to 80% of people use a tool that help them budget or track their spending. And, obviously, if you look at that statistic, 30 to 80%, that's a huge, there's a huge range there, right? So why the disparity? Well, when we kind of dove into the results, it became clear that the disparity really lay in the difference between how the surveys were worded and how rigidly they defined budgeting. And for us, this really, gave us one major takeaway, which is that people do budgeting in lots of different ways, right? There's not one single way to budget or to do it correctly. What really matters is that however you're doing it, it works for you. It's sustainable. It's a practice. It's not something you just do, once and then stop. It's a continual exercise, and it's something that, like I said, it works for you, because there are definitely a lot of potential benefits. So what are those benefits? What are the benefits of budgeting? Well, you could probably come up with a lot of different things. We came up with a list of 8, which we think is a reasonable summary. So the first is that budgeting can help us to spend a little bit more consciously than we might otherwise. So if you find yourself saying things like, yes, I can afford that, or, you know what, I'd rather have this than that, that's probably one of the benefits that you're getting of budgeting, because you're spending a little bit more consciously. You have a little bit more intention around the way you spend your money. Identifying errors. So most budgeting tools, they work by pulling in transaction data from your various accounts. And this can help you identify fraudulent charges that shouldn't be there at all. But more often, it's actually things like unintentional subscriptions, things you signed up for that you didn't want to continue, or that you didn't intend to continue over a longer period of time. Maybe you tend to move money around between different accounts, maybe a savings account, maybe a checking account, maybe a couple different checking accounts. This can help you spot when you've forgotten to do that. And so budgeting is something that can help you to identify errors. Preparing for the unexpected. So I think most of us have probably heard of an emergency fund, and obviously that is super important. But the unexpected can also be, it's not just the bad thing, right? It's not just the unexpected medical bill or the unexpected car repair or something like that. It's actually the unexpected can be good things. Maybe there's opportunities that come your way. Maybe it's an opportunity to take a trip with friends. Maybe it's an opportunity to start a business or invest in some sort of other kind of opportunity. So you can think of the unexpected as both an emergency fund, or oftentimes people these days are calling it an opportunity fund. And I really love that term. Reducing debt when you're budgeting, you obviously can take a look at any debt that you may have, and you can make a plan to pay that down. Budgeting is a great reminder to save, right? There are things that we know we want. Maybe it's vacations, maybe it's gifts, maybe it's other goals that we have for sort of short to medium term financial needs. And budgeting can be a great reminder to save. Increasing visibility. So if you have a partner, whether it's a a romantic partner or otherwise, this is an opportunity to get on the same page with that partner. It could also even be with a financial planner, right? So when you're talking to a financial planner, if you work with somebody, by budgeting, it gives you a sense of being on the same page and making sure that your spending is really aligned with your goals, as a unit, as a couple. So that kind of goes a little bit in line with the first one, which is spend consciously. Answering key financial questions, right? So can I afford this? Or when will I be able to do blank? Or maybe how can I adjust how I spend my money, my resources, so that I can achieve something else? So budgeting is a tool that can help us answer all different kinds of financial questions that we may have in our life. And last but not least, and this is probably the one that I think is the most important, is creating peace of mind. So, whether it's personal finance or life, one of the key themes I think is that oftentimes it's fear of the unknown that is actually worse than the reality. And so when we budget, we give ourselves the opportunity to spend less time wondering, less time in that place of worry where we're just wondering, what is the status? Where do we stand? And more time knowing. And even if our financial situation isn't exactly where we want it to be, if we know the status, it's going to create a certain level of calm and a certain level of peace of mind. So if these are the benefits, of budgeting, and I think you may be able to come up with a few other reasons as well. Why doesn't everybody do it, right? And I think there's some obvious reasons. We did a lot of user research when we built MoneySwell, and specifically when we built our budgeting tool. And we did a lot of interviews. We went to financial seminars. We also read a lot of books. And all of the blockers that people had around budgeting kind of fell into three kind of big buckets. So the first bucket, the challenges surrounded building and planning. So just that first step, right? Like creating the budget in the first place was something that was a bit challenging for most people. We're going to dive into that more in just a second. Updating annoyances, I think we can all identify with this, right? Like this isn't sustainable. It just takes a little bit too much time. And so updating annoyances was another sort of broad bucket of a budgeting blocker. And then last but not least was what we called off-pace frustrations. So this is essentially looking at how those budgeting tools work. So let's dive into each of these in just a little bit more detail. So like I said, we did a lot of user research, and here's one of the quotes that we had around building and planning challenges. I don't have time to go through all my spending categories and figure out what I should be setting for a quote reasonable budget. And if you think about it, budgeting is really about goal setting. And one of the things that is so often, that we often forget about goal setting is that it's actually about the tracking and the adjustment of those goals, right? It's not just about creating the goal in the beginning, it's about tracking and adjusting. And when we dive into the demo, I'm going to give you a strategy that I think is going to be a bit surprising, frankly, but I actually think it is a great strategy to help you get over that hurdle of building and planning your budget. And our tool was really designed in a way to help you leverage this strategy. So keep that in mind, and I'll make sure I come back to that. Updating annoyances. Again, in that user research, here are some quotes that we heard from that. My categories are often automatically labeled incorrectly. It takes me too much time. I find myself asking, what's the point? And I lose motivation. So with most of the other budgeting tools out there, one of the things that they do, and some people love this, but a lot of people we found actually didn't like it, is it automatically puts a given transaction into a particular category that the bank or the vendor that you purchased from has essentially assigned to those types of transactions. And this, like I said, some people actually do get value from this, particularly if they're tracking every single transaction and they're putting it into a specific category. But for the vast majority of people, we found that it was actually more of a frustration than anything else. They had to look at every single transaction, make sure that what was done was correct, and it actually just ended up being a big waste of time. Um, so, one of the things that we did when we designed Budget Planner is we really thought about this challenge and we designed some things around it. So we'll talk about that as well. And then lastly, uh, off-pace frustrations. So a couple quotes here. Whatever I budget inevitably ends up being way off in one direction or another. And then this is another one. Every time I buy a plane ticket, it tells me I've busted my vacation budget. I thought this was so fascinating. So let's talk about that first quote here. So this kind of falls into the challenge that most people have. It's actually sort of associated with planning, right? So it's either poor planning or, surprisingly, overly detailed planning. So sometimes when people just get super detailed with how they want to categorize their spending, of course, there's going to be sections that are off and it just ends up kind of being a big mess. And it's not something that is useful. And then the second quote here, every time I buy a plane ticket, it tells me I've busted my vacation budget. I pardon the expression, but I think this kind of falls into the no shit Sherlock sort of sort of category, right? Like people are like, yeah, I budget, let's just say $250 a month for vacation, and I bought some plane tickets that are $450, and it now tells me I'm way over my vacation budget. But what most of these tools don't really help you with is understanding of like, well, of course that's okay, because in all these other months we didn't even spend anywhere near 250, and so it's going to even out in the end. But these tools aren't typically giving you useful information that surrounds the fact that you're going to have sort of more concentrated bursts of activity in a particular spending category. So we have some some user experience elements within our budgeting tool that helps people to overcome that. So with that as our preamble and kind of level setting on budgeting and some of the challenges that people face, hopefully you can identify with some of these. Let's dive into a demo. One quick thing before we do the detailed demo, just a reminder, if you're looking for a quicker demo, you don't want to watch this whole webinar if you're watching it on replay, you can always check out our YouTube channel. We have a MoneySwell Budget Planner playlist, or if you sign up for an account, again, you can always sign up for a 34-day free trial, or if you're an existing customer, you can just log in. Those same videos that are on our YouTube channel are actually directly within the application. So easy to access to help you sort of understand the details of how Budget Planner works. So with that being said, I'm going to jump out of our presentation here and go into MoneySwell. So this is our staging environment. So just as a word of caution, some of what you're going to see in here is actually it's dummy data. It's obviously not a real person. It's not real data. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you look at something and some of the numbers don't seem quite right or don't seem realistic. When you log into MoneySwell, of course, you're going to land on your dashboard, and three ways to access your budget planner. You can access it from the side here. You can access it right from your agenda box in the middle of your page. In this case, it's telling us our budget plan is up to date. Or you can scroll down to your budget widget down below, and you can access it from here. So we will do that. We'll click right in there. And today, our fictional character that we're going to be using as our example is Beatrice. And one thing I want everyone to just be aware when we look at our budget planner, there's a theme throughout all of MoneySwell, which is kind of these tabs across the top. And generally speaking, you're going to move through these tabs from left to right. There's the plan tab, where you obviously are building your budget plan. The update tab, you're going to come in here once a month, typically at least once a month, maybe sometimes more, and make your updates. And then the review tab. So we're going to go through each of these. And again, as a reminder, the videos, if you are interested in just getting those quicker overviews, can be accessed on each of the tabs. And then there's an overview video that's linked here. So let's talk about Beatrice's budget. The first thing she's going to do, she's going to come in and she's going to name her plan. Pretty straightforward there. Then she's going to set a time frame, and she's going to decide which accounts she wants to sync. So let's talk about time frame first. So typically with Budget Planner, we're suggesting that you set a plan that has a specific duration of 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. You can do it for any number of months you want. You can even have a 1 month plan if that's what you'd like to do. But this is something that's a little different than most other budgeting tools, and it was done with intention. So one of the factors that we know, not just from the user research that we did for MoneySwell, but from many different sort of behavioral economics or other things like that that you can study, having an end date is a huge motivating factor. If you're doing something and saying, hey, you're going to do this from now until infinity, we tend to lose motivation at some point. But when we know there's a date where this is all going to end, or something, we have a particular goal that we're shooting for with an end date, it keeps us motivated and it keeps us on track. So I personally like to set a budget plan that is about 12 months. And that means that I'm only setting this plan once a year. Now, again, you can do it for whatever period you want. Oftentimes, when people are getting started, they're going to do it for just a few months just to kind of get a sense of how it's working, get a sense of what they're actually spending. And then they'll maybe make a longer plan after that. So you can do that however you want. The second thing is you're going to see down below these different accounts that you can link. Now, these accounts are populated from accounts that you've already added within assets and liabilities. So we can see Ally Savings, Chase Checking, Chase Credit Card. If you have other types of accounts, like a retirement account or any other asset or any other liability account, those will still be in assets and liabilities, but they won't show up in Budget Planner. And the reason for that is that Budget Planner is about your liquid assets. It's about, it's not about, spending that you're doing, or income that you're earning or money that you're saving that is outside of sort of your liquid, more short-term medium accounts. And so those are defined by checking, saving, and credit card accounts, but you still have those others as well. If you haven't added them in assets and liabilities, when you come in here, it's going to prompt you to do that if you're coming into Budget Planner first thing. So that's all you have to do for setting a plan and time frame. And then you're going to come down to your income section. And here you're going to estimate the income that you expect from all your various sources. So Beatrice and her partner Thomas, they have money that's coming in twice a month. Beatrice about $800, Thomas about $500, and then MoneySwell is going to say, okay, in a typical month, you're going to average this much. Now, if you get paid maybe every other week, that means you're going to get an extra paycheck in every single one extra or maybe two extra paychecks every single year than what you would get with twice a month. So you can do it however you want. You can change your frequency to irregular. You can put an estimate in there, or you can just change it to once a month and sum what you typically make in a given month. You can take all your paychecks and multiply them, over that whole year, and then divide it by 12, and then obviously get a typical monthly income. But it's however you want to do it. We do have the option to select a few different choices here. So that's the income sources. Pretty straightforward there. Also, don't forget, you can always add notes. So for example, if you want to remind yourself like, oh yeah, I get paid every other week, but and this is the amount that I've set, you just want to create a quick reminder for why you've set it at a certain amount. You can add a note here and just give yourself a reminder. The other thing I'll note, again, this is net income. And it says it right here in a couple different places. It says it in the title and in this section below. But if you ever have a question, throughout MoneySwell, you'll notice these little hover icons. And this gives you just that little bit extra detail to help remind you about what really that means. So again, net income is the amount that actually gets deposited into your account once taxes are taken out. Or it could also be other deductions as well. I'll also add, of course, not everybody gets a paycheck. Some people get paid through gig work and it's inconsistent. You can always select the irregular amount, and you can just say, typically I make at the low end this, at the high end this, and MoneySwell will average that for you. Or if you get paid in cash or something and you don't have a clear paycheck, you're obviously going to have to do a little bit of work to get a sense of what you're actually earning, but you can still enter that value here. Let me just take that out. And then what MoneySwell will do is it will tell you over the course of your plan It will tell you precisely how much you're expecting for the duration of your plan. So in that case, it's 2850 multiplied by 12 since it's a 12-month plan, and then it's going to give you an estimate for the month as well. Now let's move on to saving. So saving is something that not a lot of other budgeting tools explicitly prompt you to do this. And we thought that was a big miss. And so saving is such an important part of really virtually anybody's personal financial life. And so what we're talking about here, we're not talking about long-term savings. We're not talking about investments. We're talking about savings for sort of those short and medium-term needs. So for many of us, we have an emergency savings that we're building up. Ideally, we'd like to eventually get to a place where we have 6 months, maybe even a year of emergency savings or opportunity fund savings, but you can create as many buckets as you want. So Beatrice here, she has a Hawaii vacation in mind that she's planning on taking in a couple of years, and her goal is to add $50 a month. And then she's made some notes for herself. So with her emergency savings, it's an automatic monthly deposit. So she's made a quick note there. And with the Hawaii vacations, she's saying, this is the amount I hope to average over the course of her plan. So pretty straightforward there, not too much more detail to go into. Expected spending. Now this is where MoneySwell starts to do things, I think, a bit differently than most other tools. And I think it's way better, and I know that because I've used other budgeting tools in the past, and this is ultimately the solution that works for me, and it works for many of our customers as well. So what we say here is, rather than focus on tracking every single category that you spend money in, think about the 5 or the 6 or maybe the 10 at most categories that you actually care about. And these might be things that you're just generally curious about, right? Or you just, for whatever reason, you just feel like you want to track. But it could also be a category that you think, you know what, this is an area that I would like to consciously change my spending habits in. So for Beatrice, clearly that surrounds a few different things: groceries, dining out, and then she has Venmo payments, which she knows typically are for things like dining out or maybe entertainment. So these are sort of a few different categories, or sort of groups of categories that she thinks she actually has the opportunity to adjust her spending in. So those are the categories she's added. But now let's look at the other ones. She has Chase credit card spending, and she has Chase checking spending. So when you come in to build your budget, that's the first thing I want you to do. If you're going to be doing some sort of either tracking by account or tracking by account partially and a mix of categories, the first thing I want you to do is come in and add a category for the accounts you have in MoneySwell. So again, if we scroll up to the top here, she has a Chase checking account. So she's added a line for that right here. And then she has a Chase credit card account, which is also a place she spends money from. So she's added that here as well. She didn't add the savings account because that's not a place that she explicitly spends money from. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but that's not an account she typically spends money from, so she's not going to have that there. So this is a pretty simple way. This is a pretty simple way to just add up, okay, what do I typically spend for this card? What do I typically spend for these categories that I actually want to adjust? Now, this is the surprising suggestion that I mentioned earlier. Let's say you don't know, and let's say you don't want to go through the exercise of looking at your statements from the last however many months and adding them up and getting an average of what you're spending for a given account, or especially for a given category, especially since that could be something that comes across lots of different vendors. If you don't want to do that, here's the suggestion: just make a random guess. And I really do mean that. So start by just winging it. Say, oh, I think I spend $500 a month on groceries. I think I spend $1,000 a month on dining out, or whatever the case is. Just put in a random number. And if that turns out to be completely false, again, what is the point of budgeting? What is the point of effective goal setting? Well, one of the parts of it is making adjustments. And so if you put in a number that happens to be totally off because it was a guess, first of all, that's going to be really illuminating. And then secondly, it's going to give you an opportunity to make an adjustment to your budget. So again, that's kind of those are the two key points that I think differentiate the MoneySwell budgeting tool from many other tools. Is we're encouraging you not to track every category. We're encouraging you to track by account, so you still have an overall and accurate view of your spending. And we're encouraging you to take a guess, right? If you don't know, take a guess and make adjustments as you go forward. So once you've done that, once you've added your income, your saving, and your spending, you can scroll down and you're going to get a budget balance check. So this is going to tell you whether or not your expected plan for spending plus savings is balanced with your income. So if you happen to have more saving or more spending, you're going to see this extend below the balance line. And it's going to tell you that you're overspending and your budget isn't balanced. Now, there are many reasons why your budget may not be balanced, right? Maybe you are or at least not balanced with your income. So maybe you're going into debt because you're making an investment in your education. Maybe you're just living off of savings for a particular period of time. Whatever the case may be, there's good reasons why your budget may or may not be balanced. But by looking at the budget balance check, it's going to give you a sense of how far you might be off. So as an example, let's say it says that you're going to be $500 in the red every month. Well, that gives you a sense of, okay, if I have, let's just keep it super simple math. If I have $1,000 in savings and I'm $500 in the red every month, that means in 2 months, I'm going to have gone through those savings. So this is, again, one of the ways that you can help answer some of those questions that budgeting can help you with. The last thing I want to talk about here is this concept of a savings withdrawal. So oftentimes we have expenses. Maybe it's a new car, maybe it's a down payment on a home, maybe it's a computer, sort of larger but not super frequent expenses. So let's say in this case, Beatrice is planning to buy a new car. And maybe in a previous budget plan, she had a savings line item for new car, and she'd been putting money towards that consistently. And now she has about $25,000 that she's going to use as part of the purchase of a new car she plans. Well, if she tries to take the 25, there's a couple ways she could do it, right? She could either say, okay, let's take 25,000 and divide that by the total month of my budgeting plan and factor that in. But that still doesn't really solve her problem if she's pulling this money of trying to balance her budget, if she's pulling this money from her savings. So by labeling this a savings withdrawal, $25,000, and checking this box for savings withdrawal, it's going to make sure that her budget stays balanced. But if we don't select this box, look at our budget balance check. Now it's saying her current plan is completely off, right? It's saying that she's going to be spending way more, $24,750 a month more than she would need in order to be balanced. And so that doesn't really make sense if she's going to be pulling that money not from sort of current income, but from her savings. And so MoneySwell gives you the option to check a box, and I'll try to show you what happens in real time. Check a box, and then you can see how it adjusts your budget balance check so that, again, if you are drawing down from savings, it's not going to affect it. So that's the plan. And depending on how you view this, that may seem like kind of a lot of work, or it may seem relatively easy. The good news is you should probably only be doing this. Again, for me personally, I just do it once a year. Other people may do it a couple times a year, maybe once a quarter, or maybe for some people when they're first getting started, they might do it. They might have a plan that's only 1 month or maybe 2 months, but hopefully it's not too burdensome. So after you've done that, you can click to go to update, or you can click the update tab up here. We'll just click down here. And now this is your maintenance part. So this is that second budget, or that second sort of bucket that we talked about of budgeting blockers, is updating challenges. Well, let's look at how MoneySwell does that. So for MoneySwell, we always look at things on a month-by-month basis. Your plan is a certain number of months, and you update for those months. So Beatrice, her plan started in October, so that's going to be showing up in this dropdown, and it goes through September. Again, this is dummy data in our staging environment, so I'm just going to pull up a month that I know we have some data for. So I'm pulling up November. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is this notification at the top of the page. It says, when you finish your updates, jump to review to confirm completion. If needed, you can make edits later. Now, MoneySwell is designed around this idea of building healthy habits. And when it's the beginning of the month, you'll be prompted, kind of like you can see this little red bubble over here for retirement planner, you'll be prompted with a notification for updating your budget plan. And it's all about building that routine. I personally only come in once a month. I come in once a month, I skim through my transactions, I make sure they're appropriately labeled, and then I can mark complete. So we'll take a look at what that looks like in just a second. But because this is the detailed demo, we're actually going to dive in to some of the special details. So again, by default, when you select that month, it's going to show you the starting date is going to be from the first of the month, and the last date will be through the very last day of the month. You're going to click Sync Transactions. It's going to pull in, and again, this is dummy data coming, so it's already been populated, but it's going to pull in all that transaction data for that month from your bank accounts. And you'll see here, I'll just collapse each of these bank accounts. All the accounts that Beatrice has selected, her Chase checking, her Ally savings, and her Chase credit card, they're all here. Now let's dive into each of these in turn. And we'll actually start with savings because it's a simple one and it's a nice way to kind of wrap our mind around it. So we've got a couple test transactions, again, dummy data, but they're here to illustrate a few different points. So the first is we have a test transaction of $300, and Beatrice labeled this her Hawaii vacation. So again, the categories that she set on the plan tab show up in this dropdown, and she selected Hawaii vacation as that budget or as that categorization item. Then she also had an automatic transfer, also of $300 for emergency savings. But then later in the month, a few days after that, something happened where she had a car repair, let's say, and she decided, you know what, I need a little bit of extra cash, and so I'm going to transfer some money from my savings account into another account. And she could apply whatever label she wants to this, right? It's essentially reducing her progress towards her emergency savings goal. So while she put in 300 and she subtracted 200, that means she's a plus 100 this month for emergency savings specifically. And again, if we add up both of these, her overall savings, 300 plus 300 is 600 minus 200 is a $400 savings total. So she can see that kind of summed at that individual account level. Now, we do always recommend when you're building a budget plan, we recommend you have a dedicated account specifically for savings. It can be with the same institution. For example, in this case, it could be a Chase savings account. Beatrice has chosen to use Ally. The reason for this is a fewfold, but essentially you want to get a place that's going to be getting you a decent rate of return or decent interest rate for your savings account. And so you can go to sites like bankrate.com. There's many other sites out there you can look at to compare the rates for many different accounts. Ally is certainly a popular one. They tend to have high rates as well. But again, we're not in the super low interest rate environment that we maybe were many decades ago or many years ago. And so there can be a difference depending on how much money you have in your savings account in terms of the amount that you're getting back. So definitely take a look at that. All right, so that is that's a savings account where she's putting money in and taking money out. The other thing I want you to notice these little colored dots. So Ally Savings has a purple dot, Chase Checking has an orange and a sort of a green blue dot, and then Chase Credit Card has an orange dot. Those correlate with income in the green dot, spending in the orange dot's case, and then saving is the blue dot. And this is just a helpful reminder to tell you, hey, this is a checking account. Most of the transactions associated with a checking account are either going to be income related or they're going to be spending related. This is a credit card. Almost all your transactions are going to have a spending label. So this helps you as you're sort of deciding which categories to put your transactions in to kind of have that helpful reminder dot. And if you hover over these individual question mark icons, you can also see it gives you a little bit more of a reminder there as well. And they're different for each of the account types. So now let's take a quick look at checking. So checking, again, this is going to be the place where you have transactions that are both deposits and credits, purchases and transfers. And so Beatrice, she has her different income coming in from various sources. She has her paycheck, she has some side gig payments coming in, and she has Thomas's paycheck, she has a Thomas paycheck as well. Now, the thing that I want you to look at here, the other feature I want to call out is this ignore concept. So in this case, she has a bank deposit of $200. Now, because this is under deposits and credits, we would typically think, okay, that should be an income item, right? All these others are incomes. Why is this not labeled income? And the simple answer there is, in whatever budgeting tool you're using, you want to make sure that you're never double counting. And so in this case, when she moved money from her Ally bank account, she didn't want to double count that. She didn't want to say it's income. And so the easiest thing to do is just come in here and she's going to select to ignore that transaction as opposed to categorize it as some sort of income when really it wasn't income. It was just money that moved from one place to another. So she clicks to ignore that. Now, again, if you ever are wondering or you just want a helpful reminder of like, why should I ignore it? When you hover over these, specific to the account, so this is a checking account, the ignore icon is going to give you a special reminder. So in this case, it says deposits or transfer from a savings or checking account that you're tracking in MoneySwell should be ignored. They're not true representations of net income. And I can tell you, even for me, having built this tool and designed it, I use these hover icons for a couple months as I was just kind of getting in the swing of things to help remind myself, yep, this is exactly what I want to do with this type of transaction. And then down below, you can see that she's got several different transactions associated with things going out of her checking account. So again, Burgers Brew Pub, that's dining out. So she can select the drop down, she can go down here and she can click dining out. The other thing that she can do is she can just she can click it and she can start typing, and that helps to narrow down the choices and get to it very quickly. Again, she's got a couple transfers that she's ignoring, and it's helping her. She can hover over this as a reminder. Again, I'll highlight this credit card transaction very briefly. So she has a transfer for a credit card of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is essentially a payment. She paid her credit card bill from her Chase checking account. Well, she's ignoring that because she also tracks her credit card in MoneySwell. And so if she tracked the payment plus the transactions, that would be an example of double counting. And so that's why she chooses to ignore this transaction here. You don't have to do it that way. You could choose to not track the credit card at all, in which case you would obviously want to count your payments, but that's going to be up to you. I would recommend, if you spend a lot on a given card, you probably do want to track it. Again, when we think about the benefits of budgeting, we're thinking about spotting errors, getting on the same page with our partner. So while we certainly don't recommend getting overly detailed and figuring out a category for every single transaction, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit more in a second, we do recommend skimming them and just getting a quick sense of, take 30 seconds. Are there any odd transactions that you don't expect? So if you're tracking that credit card, you're going to ignore the payments to it. All right. And then we're going to look at the credit card. And the last feature that I want to highlight here is going to be done through the credit card example. So two things. So Beatrice, what is she really focused on? She's focused on reducing her spending for groceries and dining out and entertainment related expenses. Everything else, she still wants to track. She doesn't want to lose track of the fact that she's spending that money, but she doesn't really care what category it falls into. She knows that she spends reasonably in other categories, and she doesn't want to be overly burdened by tracking every single one. So what she does when she comes in here, she selects a default category. And actually, I'll do it up here for this one. So, we can do it here. So as an example, if she selects dining out, every single transaction is going to get dining out. Now, because Beatrice set up a category associated with the account on the plan tab for Chase credit card spending, that line item is going to show up here. So she goes up here, she selects Chase credit card spending, and now with a single click, she has essentially labeled, and this is obviously a short example, but for most of us, we're going to probably have 4 or 5 times as many transactions as this. This is just a dummy example. But when you have, 100 transactions or 60 or 70 transactions in a given month, it's certainly helpful to be able to label the vast majority of those very quickly. And then all she has to do, because she only cares about a few different categories, she'll go in and she'll change those. So Safeway is going to be groceries. King Soopers is going to be groceries again. Safeway is going to be groceries again. This is also groceries. So In that quick and easy way, because she's not tracking every single thing, she has an accurate view of all of her overall spending, but she's been put most of it in the bucket of Chase credit card spending. Now, a common question we get is, well, what happens when you have returns? What category should you put those into? So let's look at an example. It looks like she, on 11/6, she bought some groceries at Safeway. We're actually down here under purchases. 11/5, she bought some groceries at Safeway for $50. And then the food was bad. The product was bad. Something was wrong with it. So she returned it. So that she should essentially use the same category that she used to track the original transaction. So that's probably the most common way to do it, because again, she doesn't want to say that she spent that money when she actually got it returned. So by putting it in groceries again, it's going to essentially cancel it out. The other way you could do it if you wanted to is you could ignore both transactions. But in this case, it happens to be exactly 50 for both the purchase and the return. But maybe she only returned part of it. And that wouldn't work to ignore both of those, because then you'd be ignoring a larger transaction and then you'd be ignoring a partial transaction. So you don't want to do that. So most of the time, you probably want to add a category for the associated returns, and then that will cancel out the returns that you may get there. So she has 3 different returns this month, so that's how that works. So fairly straightforward there. Of course, you can always add manual transactions as well, but that's entirely up to you. Now, like I said at the beginning, MoneySwell is all about building routine. And so when you first come in, if you've already labeled all your transactions and you're sort of done for the month, you can just click jump to review, and it's going to scroll you down to the bottom. And this is where you're getting a month by month overview of how you did. So in this case, Beatrice can see she beat her income goal. She was at 108% of her 2850 goal that she achieved. She and Thomas achieved 3100. And she can see it broken down by the specific income category she had. She says, yep, this looks good. I've completed all my updates. So she marks complete. She's building on that routine. Savings, same thing. She comes in, she can see where she landed. She marks that complete. And then last but not least, she can look at her spending and see where she ended up there. This is just kind of a helpful gut check to make sure that everything was done right. So one thing that you can notice, for example, is if maybe you accidentally counted your credit card payment plus all of the transactions of a given month, and you see that you were, 400% of your max or 200% of your max or whatever, that would be an indication like, oh gosh, something's wrong. I must have double counted. So this can be a helpful way to make sure that you're on track there. So she marks it complete, and then she can go to review. So she's done for the month. Now, I will say, I'll just quickly go back to update. Having used this budget planning tool for many, many months now, I can certainly tell you that this whole process, I track, I think, about 8 different categories, and then I have account-based categories for the bulk of my spending. Doing all of this work only takes me about 5 minutes a month for Budget Planner. So I think that's a pretty sustainable way to do that. All right, so now we can go down to review, and this is where we get a sense of how are we pacing? How are we pacing against our plan? So Beatrice's plan started in October, it ended in September, and she can see that right now we're sort of at the end of May, so that's her pacing line. For income and saving, if you are within the current month or beyond your pacing line, it's going to be green. For spending, it's going to be the opposite, right? You have a max spending, and it's not a goal spending, it's sort of a max you want to spend. And so in that case, if it is behind the green pacing line, it will be green. If it gets beyond it, it will turn red. So let's look at a quick example. We'll break it down not by the overall, but just by a specific category. So she'll select Venmo payments. So she can see here, okay, I'm running a little hot with my Venmo payments. Again, that's probably for entertainment, dining out, those types of things where I'm paying back friends. My goal was only to spend $1,200 at max by the end of my plan. I'm already at 75%. I'm at $900. If I want to make sure I hit my goal by the end, I can only spend $60 a month on Venmo payments. Now, if we go back to our plan, we can see that Beatrice made a plan to spend $100 a month. So she comes back to review and she's like, okay, you know what? I think I can do that. That's reasonable. That's within sort of the realm of reason. I'm gonna try to do that. But if she's like, you know what, that's totally not reasonable, that's fine, right? And if you started this process by guessing at what you might spend for a given amount, this is where you're going to take a sense, you're going to get a look at where you are, and you're going to go back and you're going to make adjustments. So if you go to plan and you go to, she goes to Venmo page, she's like, 100 was never a reasonable goal. So she changes it to, let's just say 120. Now she can go back to review, and now she can see, okay, that's about right. Like I'm on pace here, and now I can spend 108 a month, and I'm not going to overshoot my max, which is now 1440. So again, that's that other part of effective goal setting, is coming in and making adjustments. I'm just going to change that back, go back to review here. All right. Now, the other chart that you have is monthly comparison. This is also a very helpful chart for spotting errors, particularly double counting errors if you happen to have done that. So if you see that, okay, most months you're sort of spending right around there, and you're looking at your orange bar, and then one month it's twice as much or something high, this would be an indication of, oh, okay, you know what? Well, first of all, she missed February, so that's one indication. But she goes back to March, she could say, okay, this is way too high. Like, there's no logical reason for that. I didn't have super high spending that month. I'm going to go back and make sure I didn't make any mistakes. So she can go back to update. She could select March, and she could find a potential error there as well. Of course, you can break this down by any of the individual categories that you've set as well. And then lastly, you can see a breakdown. So broad categories of income, saving, and spending. You can see what percentage of income may be coming from a given source, where your saving is going to from the buckets that you've created, and then spending, you can kind of get a sense of where spending is by a given category. So that's the budget planner. And I'm happy to take any questions. So start popping those into the chat. But while you're doing that, I will quickly wrap up. So key takeaways from today's presentation: setting a plan with an end date and adjusting as needed is going to be super important to keep you motivated. We recommend plans from 3 months to a year, but if you want to start with a short 1 month plan, you're certainly able to do that as well. Don't create too many categories. Like, you can certainly try, there's nothing that restricts you. You can track as many categories or subcategories as you want, but we know, and from doing a lot of user research and talking to many different people, that for most people, this becomes unsustainable relatively quickly. So track your overall spending, make it accurate by using a count-based buckets, and then tracking those 5 or 6 categories that you actually care about or have an ability to change or affect your spending in. And then lastly, create a set time to make your updates. So MoneySwell is going to prompt you at the beginning of the month, in the beginning of May. So at the beginning of June, I'm going to get a notification bubble in MoneySwell. It's going to say, hey, it's time to make sure that all your updates for May are done. I'm going to go in, I'm going to take 5 minutes, and I'm going to make that update. Getting in a routine, whether it's once a week, once every couple weeks, or once a month, that works for you, is going to be really important to make sure it's a sustainable habit. So I'll take a look at the questions that we have in the Q&A and see if there are any. But again, if you're not currently a MoneySwell customer, it starts with a 34-day free trial. You do not have a credit card required, so you can go in without giving us any payment info and just getting a sense of it, how it works. If you like what you see, use the code WEB15 for 15% off an annual subscription. So that works out to $80.75 for 1 year, or $6.73 a month. And again, that's only available if you're purchasing an annual plan. You can also sign up and just pay by the month and cancel whenever you want, if that's what you choose to do. So with that, I'll see if there are any questions in our webinar room. And cool. It does not look like we have any questions for today. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you being here. My name is Ryan, again, CEO and co-founder of MoneySwell, and we are excited for your future success and financial wellness. Thank you very much, and have a great day.